the big push with education now is that culture drives everything, which here on this show we definitely agree with. But the question still remains, is it enough? And will it be enough? That's what we're talking about today. Welcome to the Teach Bigger podcast.
Welcome to the Teach Bigger podcast. I'm Chris Pratt.
I'm Chris Mosley.
And I'm Tyler Lamond.
All right, so if you've listened to the podcast for long, you know that we talk a lot about cultivating positive relationships with students and building culture and increasing student engagement. In fact, that's pretty much what we are about. But the question today is, what do you do when this just isn't working? So we're excited today to be joined on the show with Mr. Aaron Tomhave. And Aaron is a high school math teacher here in Texas, and he also serves as department chair over math at his school. And he has a big influence in math in his entire district. And so we got to know Aaron really well, and this guy, he is the essence of Teach Bigger. He's the kind of guy, whenever you walk into his class, you're going to see anything but normal. He thinks outside the box. He is a real gift to students. And he can reach those kids that are tough to reach sometimes. So we asked Aaron to come on today because he spent a lot of time building relationships and culture. And at a glance, you would probably say, hey, this guy has done it. But as teachers do, we're always trying to reach every student. And Aaron started to notice that there are some kids that are just hard to reach. And it isn't that he can't build relationships, but he's not seeing the fruit of his labor in their results. So we asked him to join us today and to kind of talk to us about some insight that he's got. And I'm just super excited for this conversation today because I think it answers that missing question that a lot of our listeners have been wondering in the back of their brains but don't ever really talk about. So, Aaron, welcome to the Teach Bigger podcast.
Hey, how's it going, Chris?
And dare I might say that you're a rock star.
Yes.
You are a rock star at what you do.
Yeah,
Anyways.
no pressure. Way to set the bar high. Okay, appreciate that. Got to come through. I appreciate that. I have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun doing my work. So
That's awesome.
I'm glad to be here.
So I guess, Aaron, just to kind of get us started, maybe kind of talk to our listeners and let us kind of know a little bit about you, because I know that you have not a completely traditional background in education. You've done some different things. And so kind of help us to understand where you are, maybe so we can better understand why you think the way you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely say that I'm uncommon. Would be an easy way to put it. I did not get into education the traditional way at all. I come from a background, my dad is actually an educator, but I went to college and decided I wanted to make money instead. And so I got a degree in economics, finance, and a minor in math. And I got to the end of college. My wife is an educator. And I was from northern Minnesota. And back in those days, the economy was terrible. I don't know if you've ever heard of the professional wrestler Jesse Ventura.
Yes.
Yeah, he was the governor of Minnesota. And he may or may not have tanked education funding. And so when there are no jobs because everybody's getting laid off, then my wife actually got hired here in Texas. And we came here on our honeymoon to Northeast Houston, Texas. And we never left. And so, I got into education as an alternative certification person. So for the people that are listening that are alt cert, like I'm one of you.
Yeah.
I went into my first classroom and had never taught before at all. I'd never taken a methods course. They handed me my 2 boxes of textbooks and said, there's a tax test in May. And I was like, I gave them the big thumbs up.
Right. And for those of you who maybe don't know, tax test is like the standardized test in Texas long time ago. Now they've changed
but I
it.
didn't,
Right.
But I didn't know what that was. And so I smiled and nod. And then I went to my department chair and I was like,
What's that?
What's a tax test? And so, and as math departments go, a lot of times if you want to learn another subject or you want to learn another content area, you have to move. So I taught a couple of years in middle school. I've taught, a few years at a couple of different campuses, different districts, get some different flavor, have a background in technology, did a 1-year stint as administrator.
Okay.
It almost killed me. And then I left education in 2010 So I started in 02, left in 2010. Went into full-time ministry, spent a couple of years in full-time ministry, spent 7 years in the private sector as a business, director of operations for a conglomerate here in Houston. And then, God really changed that pathway, and I didn't know where I was going to land. And I got hired on at my current district, and just walked back into a classroom and realized like the whole world changed. From 2010 to 2018, like the world was not the same. The outlook on life, the mindset about technology, the influence of social media. There was no social media really in 2009, 2010. I mean, a little bit, but not now. It's everywhere.
Yeah, Facebook was still in its infancy.
Yeah. And there was no Snapchat. There was, Twitter was very minor. I looked it up. I was looking up for some other research the other day. We'll talk about later, I think. And, the phrase Google it got added into the dictionary in 2011.
Wow.
So like when I left education, you could use Google as a search tool, but a year later it became a verb as to how to find information.
Wow.
And so, the mindset of education had changed. And I felt like I came back as a new teacher again, even though I had, 15 years of work experience in the professional world. So,
and I guess just hearing you say that, it kind of really resonates, because I think that there are a lot of people who've been teaching for a while, right? And now that this COVID situation has taken place, they maybe find themselves feeling like that, like the whole system has changed, and I'm like a new teacher for the first time in 15 years, and nothing is the way that it was.
Yeah. And I think too, part of it, I'm the oddball. I love change. I don't like stasis.
Right.
For me, standing still is always falling behind.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, I'm the guy that if you come in my classroom today and then come into my classroom 2 days from now, the desks will not be in the same spot.
Yeah.
I move them all the time. I don't leave them in the same spot. I don't leave my kids in the same spot. I don't do the same thing 2 days in a row because I just don't. It's not my mentality. So even as an early adopter, it was still shocking to go all the things that had changed. And I like change.
Yeah.
So for people that I know that are they're more change averse, they like their traditions and their kind of normal rhythms. The COVID shift for me was like, yeah, buckle up, let's do this.
Yeah.
Then a lot of people went, whoa, I can't change that fast. And so, yeah, there's a lot. And now we're in a different world even now. So even since I started back, I've taught 3 different grade levels over 3 different years in 3 different subject areas in class, hybrid, online, and done some work with a group in California, all online, remote learners, all at the same time. And so for me, it's like, let's just keep changing and find what's actually going to finally make the rubber meet the road,
So, I think, like us on this show, we tend to be more that kind of mentality. We're very forward thinking and we like change as well. But what have you seen in your students as a result of this? I'm just curious, because you're someone who sort of cultivates that change in the culture of your classroom, where so do your students latch a hold of that, and are they willing to accept it, or do you find that you're hitting some major obstacles?
It takes me 6 months probably to win them over, because you get, especially I'm in math, right? So what are they used to? Can't I just get a workshheet?
Right.
Can I get a
Can I
worksheet?
just give me a worksheet? Why aren't these all multiple choice?
Right.
That kind of mentality, because it's traditional. It's what they know.
Right.
They hate online learning. Hate it. My own kids. So I have 2 kids. My kids are 13 and 16, 8th grade pre-AP Algebra 1, sophomore in pre-AP Geometry. Both great kids, real smart. Just super, super blessed as a parent. And that they hated online learning. My son is much more social emotional driven. It was detrimental to his growth.
Wow.
My daughter is more independent. And even she was like, she laughs, she teases me. She says things like, I don't even really like people, but I still don't want but I still don't want to do online school by myself. So it's funny. It's funny because it's like, how do you, if I see that with my own kids in my own home, then how much more difficult is it when, in a household where both parents aren't educators, we have the socioeconomic benefits that we have in our home of, high-speed internet and those kinds of things. It took a toll. It took a toll. 6 months of basically no instruction mathematically.
Yeah.
Just a lot. It's a lot. And so then it compounds the things that we were seeing before, but it really, man, it ripped the Band-Aid off. Like, you cannot hide. You can't hide the gaps now.
Yeah, because they're so big. The gaps are so big. It's so interesting because like when we were in the middle of quarantine, I don't know, maybe we were a little bit more closer to the end of school, but I was talking to one of my teacher friends, and I asked him, I was like, man, what do you think about like this gap that's going to happen? He's like, oh no, there's not going to be a gap. He's like, no more than normal. I was like, are you serious? Like you seriously don't think that? He's like, no, man, it's fine. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to talk to you again here like in a year from now, and I'm going to see if you still think the same exact thing. And I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it yet, but I mean, how can you not see that there's going to be a gap between, even students who are like internally driven to do some of that stuff, they were having a hard time with. I'm a person who's incredibly internally driven, and the only class I ever failed in college was my kinesiology class that was blended, where I only had to go to class 1 day a week and the rest of it was online. And I bombed it. And then when I finally passed it, it was like, I don't know, somebody upstairs was looking out for me, I guess. I don't know. But I tried an online mini mester, had to drop it. Tried an online math class because I'm really strong in math. I thought this will be good. I'll be able to teach myself. Had to drop it. I needed that in-person thing, like I couldn't just do it myself.
Wow.
I don't know, maybe it'd be different now that I'm older, but probably not.
Yeah, I had the opportunity. I was interviewed for a news article in November, probably. And they said, what was the biggest difference? And you know how sometimes you say something that's bigger than you and you don't really realize it till afterward?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I've replayed this in my mind a couple of times, and I'm talking to her on the phone, and I said, look, accountability is not the same online as it is in person. It's just not. You cannot evaluate the emotional vibe that a kid's given off when they're trying to attempt something that they think ahead of time they're going to fail anyway. You cannot tap into that through a screen. It's just different. So that's not to say you can't hold people accountable, because you can, but it's not the same. And so I struggle because I can do it, but that doesn't mean they can do it or do it successfully.
Mm-hmm. And when you're doing that, it is more on you, because like when you're the student who's doing the online stuff, because like I still teach myself things from YouTube, of course, YouTube University, and like I can do it, but it's way slower. It's like a snail's pace, because I'm pulling two roles. I'm trying to be the teacher and the student, and then I'm also trying to funnel through all the riffraff of what's real and what's not real and everything like that. And then when you're actually doing it and you're the teacher and the student, they're like, especially if they're on mute and you only see them through a screen, there is no social interaction, no social cues. Like it's almost as bad as just having the eyes, the mask covers up everything. Like, I think we've all gotten pretty good at telling people's moods just based off their forehead and their eyes. But for the most part, like when school first started, I was like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine, having a good day. Okay, well, I'm good. I'm happy for you. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right. So So I guess, Aaron, give us a little bit of an understanding of kind of what's brought you to this point, because I know that you're someone who builds relationships, you build culture in the classroom, but you started to notice a trend in your students. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that to kind of set the tone of this amazing advice that you're going to give us today?
So this has been coming for several years now, about probably the beginning of the second semester, my first year at my current position. So I'm out for 7-8 years. I come back. I finally feel like I'm getting my feet underneath me, and I'm going, okay, I'm remembering how this feels to keep a classroom running, because like classroom management is not something that's natural. You know what I mean? So getting in that groove, and I get to January, and I'm like, yeah, we're going to do this. And no. And I'm like, so, okay, great. Okay, I'm going to change what I do. I'm going to innovate, and I'm going to create, and I'm going to make this dynamic stuff. This is going to be great. And then, I call it giant flaming piles of poo. Okay. It didn't just go down. It like lit itself on fire, and you're like, geez. And so you're like, okay, so I just spent, an amazing amount of time to create this incredible thing. And they just went, no. Mm-hmm. And so you go, right, I am missing something. And that was the question that's been plaguing me now since, January 2 years ago. And I got some clarity 2 weeks ago that I've been looking for quite some time. And this is where it comes down to. You go, okay, are relationships important? 100%. Absolutely. But if relationships are if relationships are the key, then how can I have a student in my 5th period Algebra 1 class? She's a freshman. She comes to my class in the morning. She stops and talks to me whenever she can. She fist bumps me in the hallway. She likes to stand next to me between classes and just tell me about her day and talk about her family and how she's doing. And she just comes and hangs out with me. We have a fantastic relationship, and she is nowhere even close to passing my class. Not even in the ballpark. Now, we're not talking like mid-60s. Like, we're talking not even right. Sniffing the 50s. Okay.
Right. Like your grade should be higher than your age, kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. when you're talking like, your grade is under drinking age. Okay. Like it's bad. Right. Oh, and so then I'm asking the question of her. I'm like, hey, like I have a rolly chair too. I'm a big dude. So the kids told me a couple of years ago, like they don't like it when you stand up. So I'm a big guy. So I have this rolly stool, a little mechanic. So I roll around my classroom. It's funny. And I'm big too. So like I got tons of desks in there, and I'm rolling through whacking people. I'm like, sorry, big guy coming through. And so I roll up to the kid's desk, and you're like, hey, how you doing? And they always, they laugh, but I look at it and I was like, listen, I'm like, are you okay? Like, man, are you okay? And I was like, I'm okay. I got this going on. I got that going on. I'm like, okay. Like, are we okay? Oh no, Mr. T, I love you. I'm like, so then why won't you do what I know you're capable of? And the answer is because I know I'm not. And you go, wait. I know what you can do. I have seen it. I have seen glimmers of excellence in you, but they'll go, no, I can't do it. So then there's a combination of emotional issue, right? There's fear and anxiety triggers. There's some social anxiety too, right? But it's those emotional defense mechanisms that are a light switch to your mind, especially when you're trying to do math, because it can already be intimidating. And it's a decision process it's a learned response from somewhere. And you go, okay, well then how can help me help you? What can I do to help you to feel comfortable? Because I'll ask them, and they'll tell me straight to my face, because I want it straight. Is it okay to make mistakes in here? And it takes them some time, because we make mistakes big. Mm-hmm. They'll make a mistake and they'll be like, ooh, nice try, but not even close. And they laugh, right? But it takes time to kind of build that process, right? Mm-hmm. Because then they go like, oh, I made the mistake. I'm like, yeah, a bunch of people made the mistake. How do we fix that? Right. So it's a growth mindset. It's process mindset, those kinds of things. But man, I still wasn't getting anywhere. How do you miss that kid? And so now you go, okay, I have to take the relationship that I do have and I have to leverage that thing for everything I've got to get everything I can to overcome everything else that is in the way. Because I don't believe in barriers, I only believe in obstacles. They are only barriers if you leave them there of your own will. So they go, oh, it's a barrier mentality. No, no, no. Barriers are there to protect you from getting hurt. Obstacles are in your way to make you stronger. So you got to change from barriers to obstacles. You have to shift that mindset. And it is painful for them. You know, I got a girl in geometry, knew this 100%, like guaranteed, knew the content. She should have scored 85, 90, should have. 36, 36 on a major test, on a major grade. Handed it back to her, just gave them the answers and said, we're gonna like workshop this thing. First response, man, what was I thinking? What was I doing? I know how to do this. So that's my question to them. Like, you have to help me with that. Why is it that you knew what to do? I know that you knew what to do. Why didn't you write down on that paper what you know is true in your mind? And every single kid that responded in that room was the same kind of thing. Fear, anxiety, stress, penalty, all those things immediately overwhelm their mind, and they lose the ability to think rationally and to allow themselves to pursue excellence because they are just paralyzed by fear of failure.
Wow.
Okay, so let me elaborate on this a little bit, or put my 2 cents in this, because I'm experiencing something very interesting that's very close to this. So in my class right now, we're exploring the 12 principles of animation. Okay, so what I did is I took each principle and I turned them into small assignments. By no means were these assignments supposed to be full-on animation projects that were supposed to take forever. Like, I'm talking, and the examples I gave were them to make like a ball bouncing. Like, they weren't supposed to be basically creating their own Dragon Ball Z characters. That's not what this was about. This was for them to understand all of the 12 principles so that way we could move on to a large project. Okay. It is now going on the better half of the second month of doing these. And it's because they keep trying to, they've turned every single one of these into these giant projects. And like, I think, and I keep telling them, I'm like, you don't have to draw these things. You can go above and beyond and do all these like amazing over the top things. That's fine, but you can't do that at the cost of hindering yourself from learning something new. You can't go all in on one of these assignments, because you still have, if you do that, you still have 11 more. That's not going to help you at all. You're not going to learn anything. You're not going to get anywhere. And it's like they only know how to go all in on one thing. And then they're so deathly afraid that they're going to fail. They don't understand the process, that if you want to get good at something, you do a little bit of a bunch of things. You don't go work out and do 10 push-ups or 1,000 push-ups in one thing and then you're buff. It takes 10 push-ups every single day for like 3 months or 3 years or whatever, and then you start seeing results. You know what I mean? It's not one big, you go and you're done. And what I've noticed is that a lot of students have this fear that, one, it's not good enough, so they want to keep going and they want to keep going, they want to keep going. And then two, I find that they lose sight of what the actual assignment is. Because one student told me, they're like, oh, I get it, so you just want quantity over quality. I said, no, this is not an issue over quantity. This is not an issue over quality. This is an issue over concept. And they're like, well, what do you mean by concept? I was like, I'm trying to make you and try to see if you understand these concepts of animation. This is not a drawing class. I'm not grading you on your drawing or whatever. And I even had one student who spent, man, I don't even know, like 2 weeks on one thing. And he had this really cool drawing, but it wasn't the assignment at all. Like, he basically just kind of did whatever he knew what to do because he knew he'd be successful with that, even though that wasn't the assignment. And then it was real kind of sad because he was on assignment 2 of 12 and he had spent 3 weeks on it. And I was like, this is why I kept telling you to move on, and you refused to move on. And this isn't even the exact what the purpose of the thing. Like, this doesn't demonstrate that you understand this concept, kind of thing. So I think that this kind of goes with what you're talking about, because in your instance, they don't know what they don't know, but they know how to give up. So that's what they're doing. They're giving up.
Mm-hmm.
In my instance, they don't know what they don't know, but they do know how to, that if they put everything in, usually things turn out okay, because that's what we tell people, put it all in, try your hardest and then you're okay. So then they have this huge fear of failure and everything like that.
But see, you said something really interesting though. And I did a quick Google while we're talking. There's a big difference between concept and product.
Yes, there
and
is.
I think there's a big push, particularly in modern secondary education. They want product focused, right?
Yes.
What product will they make? And so what you're talking about is, I want you to work on a product so that you practice a process so you can understand a concept. And those three things are not the same. Like y'all are my band people originally, right? I'm a musician too, right? So yeah, econ, finance, math. I'm not a math major, right? I like applied math. I want to use it to do cool things like, physics and engineering and economics. I want to make money, which I don't, but that's okay. But I love music. So I've been trained as a musician since I was a little kid. And so there's something that you learn as a musician and as an athlete or whatever. I'll talk to my band kids and I go, how do you learn a piece of music? One note at a time. How do you learn how to play baseball? One step at a time. How do you become a great power lifter? 1 pound at a time. But that concept of process for progress to excellence is completely lost. And my daughter today, she was like, Dad, that's not the world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
We don't live in a process-oriented society. We live in a product-oriented society where you get instantaneous feedback.
Yeah, click.
Well, okay, so it's so interesting that you're saying this, because I think we have stumbled upon this huge issue that no one talks about in education, or maybe they do talk about it and I just don't hear it, okay? And I'm now currently working at an elementary school, and so my life has been radically changed because I've spent my entire career in secondary. And, things are just different at elementary school. Like, kids use the bathroom on themselves and things like that. But you know what? They do that in secondary too. So, but anyways, I digress. What's interesting is I spend 2 days a week sitting in, what most people think of as PLCs, professional learning communities, collaborative teams, whatever you want to call it. But each grade level comes together and they do all their planning together, and I think this is a pretty common trend right now in most schools across America. And we had a very similar conversation, Aaron, to what you're talking about. And there were a lot of teachers that they're going over their data right now, and they're discovering that kids are not doing well. Okay. And this was actually said this week in the elementary school more than once by different people. I don't know what happened to them. They know how to do this, but they didn't show that on the test. And then, one teacher kind of chimed in, well, this one has major test anxiety. Like, she just gets really scared and she just shuts down and whatever. And so I think what you're talking about is actually something that's happening way earlier in life. And these kids, it's not that they woke up and thought algebra is scary. It's that school has been scary to them their whole life. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, absolutely.
And now we have this mindset that I can't learn. And us as educators, we're not addressing the mindset. We're just looking at the project and saying, you're not right.
Here's another test.
Here's another test. Yep. See if you can get it right this time.
Yep. We're going to spiral that, and we're going to write more curriculum because that's going to solve the fact that they didn't learn the first time. I told you my dad was a math professor. So everything I learned about teaching math before I became a math teacher was by watching him do his job. Mm-hmm. And watching Stand and Deliver, be honest with you. Because it's like, I went into I had no clue. Yeah, that's right. I use
A
it every
negative plus
single
the
day.
negative
I
equals the
do it every day.
positive. Again.
Negative times negative equals, yeah, exactly. Again.
Look, folks, if you haven't seen
Um,
Stand and Deliver, that's your weekend movie.
It's
Okay,
great.
Yeah,
just
if
watch
you
it.
have not seen it, I mean, like, thanks for making me feel old, because it's not new. But anyway,
Yes.
I watch those kinds of things, and I'm like, this is the way we want to go, right? But it's that underlying piece, and so the question I'm asking now is, okay, what are we doing to equip them to be better learners? I don't, if we want them to be exceptional people, we want them to pursue excellence. We have to teach them how to be excellent and how to pursue independent excellence. My dad taught me one thing really, 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 really well. I found out, ironically, a lot of the little games that we played when we were kids were just math games that got us to shut up because we had cars with no phones. I'm just saying, long car rides, like do a math game.
I need you to put together an entire training for me, for my children. I need some math games. Please hurry quick.
I got some good ones. How many triangles are in this picture? It can last them 30 minutes.
Okay, I love it.
You know, but it's one of those things where I learned how to teach myself. I learned how to learn for me because I chose it. So like people go like, how do you play? So I actually host the guitar. My wing group is not math. I host the guitar nerds because I'm a guitar nerd. Everything I know about guitars, I have learned by playing guitar. I played violin, then I played string bass, then I played electric bass. Now I play acoustic electric mandolin bass and ukulele, and I don't care. I have pedals. I don't care. I will learn anything and everything I can to do anything I want to do because my mind is unlocked. And people look at me and go, "You are crazy."
Okay, look, I have experienced that same exact thing. I remember when I graduated college because post-graduation depression is a real thing. Because
It is.
when you graduate college, and especially like nowadays, and like, look, I get it, millennials, they're terrible, and I'm one. Yeah. But I'll say this is that you live your whole life. Like my whole life was lived with, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a job. This is it. This is what you're going to do. But no one ever showed me like what to do next. And like, what do you do when you have that job? Like, how do you find worth in yourself? Like, how do you do these things? And I noticed that I was getting very depressed with myself because I didn't know what to do. And when I was talking to my friends about things, they were depressed the same thing, but different. My depression, or I don't want to say that I was full on depression, but my problem was coming from is that I knew that I could teach myself to do anything that I needed to do. So my problem was that I couldn't choose what I needed to do because I knew that I could do everything that I wanted to do. And I remember trying to talk to my friends about it, and they were like, I just can't do anything. Like, there's no more teachers to teach me things. There's no more this. There's no more this. And I remember being taken back and being like, what do you mean? Like, you should know how to teach yourself to do anything. It just will take really slow, you know? So I think there's something to that. And I think that there might even be something to socially being, I don't want to say socially being acceptable, but being social inept, like being able to talk to somebody and not be anxious with that. If you can do that, I wonder if there is a connection between all the social anxieties and the test anxiety and the school anxiety and all of these things, and worrying about if you're going to be considered dumb or stupid, or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's just the sole fact of human interaction gives you the confidence to move on and push yourself to do something else. I don't know.
Okay, so you hit like a really, really important point, and that I don't think many people take the time with, Aaron. It was the like how to learn part, because it's my second year at my school, and last year, there's a band group. There's a guy who works in like music education, and he does this thing with one of the drum corps, and it's all talking about like the different learning levels. Like it's like it rates it from like 0 to 7. 0 is like learns nothing, okay, and then like 1 is like here's 1 or 2 things, and then instructions will need to be repeated, blah blah blah. And then level 2 and whatever, and then it goes all the way to like level 5 is like it takes what the instructor is saying and tries to apply it to further things and blah 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 blah, and goes 7 or whatever. So I did that with my group last year, and it's just we put the accountability on them. I said, okay, so at any time, any one of you can be any level. I said, what we're trying to do, if we're trying to be this or whatever, you're all going to have to be at least 4 or 5 on any, at any given moment. If we want to be this, we got to be 6 or 7. I said, and this is like applied to your other classes, okay? Because it's no one's responsibility to receive the information but you. I said, it doesn't matter. It can be anyone. You can learn from anybody. It's just like you putting down that guard, that shield, whatever, and then how much information you let in, how you think about it, that's on you. It's not, the level that the instructions coming at you does help too, but how you receive it, that's going to be on you. So after that was a huge, and I started with my top kids in the wind ensemble. It made a huge shift. And like those kids from that point, if they did something bad, I said, you see, that's a level 1. And the room would just get still. I'm like, you see how we have to do it again? Now, if you would fix it, bump it up a level, we could just keep going. And so at the beginning of classes, I would say, okay, I want you to go through now, and I want you to pick a level that you're going to state that's going to be your base level of learning today. Pick it. And then they would read what that is. A level 4 learner, here's all that's given. Doesn't need instructions repeated. We'll look forward to what's going on next in the lesson. We'll try to see where the teacher's going next. Okay, raise your hand if you're going to try to be that today. And we just kind of kept holding each other accountable. And we took 2 days to go over that. That was a huge point in the culture shift in my program. And I started with the top kids, and then I went to the second band kids and the third band kids and just said hey, you know what? If we want to be this type of band or whatever, that's really going to be on you, because I'm going to give you great instruction at all times. I'm going to try, and sometimes I might miss it or whatever, but it's going to be on you how you receive it. And then that really helped as we switched to virtual last year. Because I had a conversation about that. I said, here's where the level of learnings is going to be super, super important, because now the classroom has changed. But if your level of learning is still high, you're still going to get it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's fantastic. Yeah. In fact, I'm totally going to steal something like that. And
it's great.
I'm probably not going to try to do it now.
Yeah.
I can say, but it's one of those things where I love that the perspective then is a student reflecting on themselves and making a decision about their learning frame of mind. And that's a skill. That is a skill. There's an assumption, and I'll say this in general, because higher level math teachers in secondary stereotypically are real bad about this. They should know that by now. They should know that by now, or they should be able to do that by now.
Oh, that happens all the way down to elementary school. Fifth grade teachers say they should know that by now. And third grade teachers say,
Yeah. And I get, I had a tough conversation with some central office people today. And it's just, these are hard conversations. These are conversations that don't have oh, I'm going to do a lesson, done. It's not, if you can't do, it's not one of those things. This is not a checkbox that you do. This is a shift of mindset and mentality that takes time and energy and effort. And it is costly. You cannot do this without expending yourself and then leveraging those relationships at the same time. And so, but it's worth it. The costly thing, the great things are always worth it. And I think that's part of the shift in my classroom too, is it's listen, I don't care. I care that you haven't passed before, but what you've done in the past doesn't define your future. You define your future.
Right.
Do you want to get better or worse? We do a launch at the end every day. I started my class with my launch today because I was listen, you need to hear this. And I'd have to look up the specific quote, but the gist of it is basically everything you do, no matter how small, matters. It either moves you forward or backwards. There is no neutral. The choice is yours.
Can you talk about that? The launch, what is that?
Yeah, so it's intended to be part of our structure culturally inside of our campus. It's one of the non-negotiables. It's part of the inspirational piece. It's on your way out the door, I'm going to launch you for success, right? And sometimes it is hey guys, you've had a tough day today, but it's it's a tough, I went to the gym tough. I'm sore because I worked hard today. Those are good days. Get some rest. look at a few things. I'll see you in a couple of days. Other days it's like inspiration or striving for excellence, whatever. And I needed one this morning because I was like, my mindset, I was not in a good place. Mentally, I was not in a good place. There's a feeling of frustration that comes from, as a teacher, feeling like you are failing every single day of the year since we started online. Mm-hmm. Like there is an overwhelming sense of sadness and loss as a professional, because this is not a job to me. Mm-hmm. This is a calling. This is a ministry. This is the culmination of my life's work academically.
And it feels like it's falling apart.
Yeah, and it feels like I'm getting nothing and going nowhere. Mm-hmm. And my kids, but I got kids who can't stand me because I won't do things the way they like it, and they're still passing my class. So you can't tell me that nothing's working. Mm-hmm. But then I'm asking the harder question, which is, why is a system academically I know works not showing up when the rubber meets the road? Where's the breakdown? It is emotional, it's social emotional, it's developmental, and it is systemic. And I'm part of it. I am part of the problem because I exist inside the system that I helped create. And I have to be critical of my own self because I'm tired of looking at the situation and going like, well, they should know this by now, and they don't. Well, forget that. I'm like, no, I hate failure. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. So you just said a lot of things that like I kind of want to unpack because that was like a lot. So when you were talking about like they should know this by now, mm-hmm. And I think I've said this before, whenever I think that, well, they should know how to do this before, I remember back to when I was a 6th grade teacher teaching 6th grade band, and I had to teach the kids how to sit down in a chair because they had never been taught how to sit up straight. And yeah, they're in 6th grade. They should know how to sit up straight, but they don't. And that is not the only thing or the only instance where that's happened. I have a friend she's an art teacher. And she says the first thing that she teaches every single school year and constantly goes over is how to sharpen a pencil. Because no one has ever taught them how to sharpen a pencil correctly. And if she doesn't do it, they're just going to continuously sharpen and sharpen and sharpen and sharpen until they have this little nub. And then it's like, what are they going to do now? And she's like, well, that's why I have to teach them how to sharpen a pencil, because no one taught them how to sharpen a pencil. They just expected that they'd be able to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So that's not an excuse to say, well, they should know this by now. Well, if you're a teacher and you realize that they don't know it by now, then now it is your responsibility to pick up the pieces and fill in the gaps.
See,
we used to always say you have to teach them everything.
Yeah, and here's the thing: when your goal is to teach kids over content, you'll do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because
I don't teach math, I teach people.
Exactly. At the end of the day, what I'm seeing, it reminds me of that old proverbial saying, right? Like if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And education has been giving out fish for free year after year after year. We give you the answers to the test. We tell you the test taking strategies. We do everything to help you get the test done. But we never taught you how to do the skill. We never taught you how to math. Mm-hmm. We taught you how to test. And the problem is, in life, you're not going to get a written standardized test. You're going to have to know how to math.
Yeah, that's just like that man that I helped on the side of the road when I took him to the gas station.
Right.
He was complaining. Tomhave, in case you don't know, during the freeze, there was a guy who was broke down inside the road, like not far from my house, and he just needed gas, so I took him to the gas station. He was 22 years old, and he was deathly afraid to go back to school because he felt like he skated by in high school, and he said multiple times, "They just gave me a degree to get out. They just gave me a degree to get out, and now I'm trying to find a tutor or whatever because I want to go to college, but I know that I don't have the skills or any of the knowledge necessary to go." So like he is even afraid to take that jump to go to college, and also wasn't even told the information that you don't need to know everything to go to college. Like college already has like things in place for remedial classes. Like they would have got him where he needed to be, or supposedly they should. So like that's just one of those things. Like you have to teach them and everything. And if you just wash your hands and go, well, they should have already known that by now. They should know that by now, like blah, 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 and wash your hands with it. Then, like you said, you're now even more a part of the problem and you're not fixing it. And it's just always going to be like that. It's going to be like that tire that you're driving with, that light's been on forever. And you sit there and think like, well, I know I didn't run over no nail. So I'm pretty sure that light's got to be wrong. And it just slowly deflates and gets lower and lower and lower. You can't ignore it forever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think part of it too, and I think this is going to sound not very polite, so forgive me.
We do that a lot here, so go ahead.
We love it. I said I wasn't polite yesterday. Go
ahead. Well, I like to say that ahead of time because can I pause for just 1 second to tell you something funny? You guys will love this.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my family, we talk about scalpels and sledgehammers. Delivery matters. Okay. The tool is useful in different contexts.
Yes.
Me, I tend to be like 5-pound sledge, 10-pound sledge, wrecking. Like that's me. My wife, she is scalpel. She will just cut right through it. But anyway, so I tend to be more sledgehammer. So forgive me. I'll try to go smaller hammer. None of you have taught math before.
No, and you don't want to.
And I know you've taught band. And I'm not saying that competition doesn't matter, but competition is subjective.
I would say competition don't matter.
But I'm just.
You're right, though. You're right.
I'll say it this way: your competition doesn't matter. Because if they fail at a competition and they get 4s, I have a flautist in the family. My daughter plays flute. I know 1s matter. But in the grand scheme of things, do you have to get a 1 to graduate from high school? No. May 6th, my Algebra 1 students will be held to a particular standard for Algebra 1, and nobody gives a crap that they were not in school learning math from March 15th until October. So you're telling me my innovation, like I'm an innovator. I'm happy with that. I love to do that. There is not enough time. So the reality is, Tyler, now we know. I know there's a problem. I know I have to do something to fix it. I don't have the answers because every answer is unique to each kid. And I now have 24 class periods until the state says they should be done. And if they're not done, I'm a failure. And nobody can tell me that's not exactly what that looks like. And so, it's one of those things where you go like, okay, great. So I look at this and I go like, I'm failing as a teacher. I'm going to do everything in my power, but I only have 24 class periods left. I can't reinvent their life and get them past a random standard. Let me tell you something. If we teach the content like we're supposed to, and we do a good job doing it, there's no reason why any kid should not pass that. So that's not the problem I'm up against. It's not that they're not smart enough. They're smart enough. It's not that they're not good at math. They're good enough.
And it's not that you haven't built relationships because you have good ones.
Yes. But at the end of the day, they will tell me to my face, I know you love me. And I know you care about my future. But I've never passed it before. I'll never pass it now. It is a definitive statement to your face. What do you do when John Wink says, what do you do when you don't know what to do? They say, quit, stop, wait, or wait for you to tell me what to do. They get mad. Oh man, there's a reason why it takes a while to get used to my class, because they'll go, Mr. T, raise my hand. I don't know what to do. My response is always, okay, all right, sounds good. I'm glad you let me know. What do you see?
Ooh,
no. I don't know what to do. I'm like, yeah, what do you see? What is that? You ever seen that before? I don't answer with a statement. I answer questions with questions all day long. And it drives them crazy because they're like, why won't you just tell me what to do? And I'm like, my job is not to tell you what to do, baby. My job is to teach you how to know what to do for yourself. My job is to teach you how to have this conversation in your mind so that when your brain goes, that you can get things rolling again by going, okay, Mr. T would look at me and say, what do I see? And then at least you've got some place to start. They say, they go, I don't know how to do any of this. Okay, read that word. And they're like, which one? That one, the 3-letter one. They're like, the. And I go, oh, you know something. Shocker. And then they laugh and they calm down. But watch what happens. They calm down. It takes the obstacle down emotionally. And I go, okay, now what do you see? And they're like, oh, I just didn't read it. Right. But I can't do that in a gym with 400 kids taking an EOC in 24 class periods.
It's kind of like you're trying to build a house with no nails in the middle of a hurricane on a beach, and it just hit landfall. And
you got to put the bricks 6 feet apart.
Yeah, I'm not even building the house.
Right. Yeah,
I'm standing over in the back going like, hey, you gotta build a house.
Grab that hammer over there. No,
and they're like, what's a hammer?
Yeah.
Like, you need a 10-penny nail. What's a 10-penny nail? I mean, and that's a lot of algebra 1. It's skill oriented, it's process oriented. They'll be like, when are we ever going to use this? And I'm like, this never. Okay, it's not like that. I said, but you can't build a tiny house if you can't swing a hammer. So when I was a kid, my dad, I would be like, Dad, I want to build like you. I'm like 5, 6 years old. He gave me his oldest, junkiest hammer and a bent nail and a piece of scrap wood and said, pound that nail into that piece of wood. I thought I was building things. I wasn't building anything. I was learning not to hit myself.
My dad did the same thing to me. And, it's interesting that you use that analogy. So talking back about my 12 principles of animation, I told the kids today, I was like, this is like if you were in a construction class or woodworking class or whatever it is. And I was trying to teach you how to use a hammer and a nail, and you went outside and tried to build a house instead in order to teach yourself how to use a hammer and a nail. I was like, that's not going to work. I was like, you need to get a board and hammer the nail into the board first, make sure that you don't know how to hit yourself, and then we can start to like maybe build a house. Maybe we'll start with a birdhouse.
So I mean, to me, at the end of the day, what we've kind of stumbled upon here today, Aaron, and we appreciate this, is that we have 2 things to overcome, really, from what I'm gathering from our conversation. And the first thing is kids have mindsets that are incorrect about themselves or a subject. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then it may be that independently, or it may be coupled with they don't know how to learn on their own. They're completely dependent upon the system that we've built for them. I was thinking about this while we were talking, and it's like YouTube has given us this, right? YouTube has shown that anyone can learn anything and that anyone can teach anything, right? And it's also shown us that anyone who wants to make money doing anything they want can. Mm-hmm. But then with those 3 perspectives, what it showed us that most people just want to stand by and watch. And most of our kids want to just stand by and watch. And they want to just like ride through, and then is this show over yet? They don't want to create the show, and they don't want to have to do what's being asked. So I mean, I don't blame YouTube. I think YouTube's amazing. It's just how are you using it? And it's the same thing in your classroom. I can't blame you as a teacher. You're an amazing teacher. They're not using it because no one's told them how. Mm-hmm. And then there's that whole other thing, like, do they even want to know how?
Yeah, and there's 2 pieces to that. Mm-hmm. If they don't want to know how, the question's always going to be, as a teacher, what are you doing about that? Mm-hmm. And we do. Yeah. I mean, that's where you leverage those relationships. You try to inspire them. You connect it. You make it as relevant as humanly possible. They'll be like, Mr. T, when would anyone ever buy 37 watermelons? I'm like, you don't, but that's not the point. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how things go. And we do those kinds of things. But what you said was really interesting. What is mathematics about? Fundamentally, from like you 3, what's your perspective wise? What is the purpose of math?
Being able to look at things subjectively and being able to break them down to their smallest forms and then rebuilding them based off of the patterns. I've thought about that a lot already.
Chris Mosley, what do you think? What is math? Like, what's the purpose of math?
Like accountability, like checking the balances, like
Okay.
a definitive answer.
Definitive answer. Got it. Chris Pratt. What is math?
I think that it's putting something concrete into the abstract so that you can manipulate it.
Okay. What if I told you that math was intended to be as creative as music?
I would.
Then my mouth is wide open, and I'm like, tell me more, because I've never considered that.
No. But see, Chris, you're my guy. I'm watching your face. See, this is funny. So, Lamont, I know you're with me, man. Like, you're a math guy.
I'm with you. I love math.
I hate it.
But Chris Mosley, man. Yeah, and you two, Pratt, you and I have talked about this, but Mosley, I'm watching your face. Here's the thing. My kids will go, when am I ever going to use this? And I'm like, listen, what do you do when you don't know something in a problem? What do you do? They're like, oh, we put an X in there. I said, what's that called? They says variable. I said, give me one thing in your life that doesn't change. The answer is nothing. I said, the reason we only do 1 or 2 variables at a time is because that's all you can handle. But your entire life is variable. Math is learning how to creatively process all of the things that are changing and to respond to it based on facts. Why do you vote for Trump? Why do you vote for Biden? I don't care. I hate politics. I don't think it solves anything. But if you vote for Biden because you hate Trump, you just lied to yourself. Because there is no truth in that. It's not about numbers. It's not about answers. It's not about A, B, C, or D. It's not about passing a test. It's learning how to decipher a pathway based on evidence. If I want my son to be successful, so he's learning how to throw the discus. He learned early. It is extraordinarily hard. Because the people who are great make it look easy, and the work it takes to make it look easy is long and hard, because the amount of variables that are taking place in that 6.5 foot wide circle is extraordinary. It's like watching, I love the movie Drumline. I know it's not realistic. It don't matter. It's still a cool movie to me. But I've seen somebody try to duplicate the solo. You watch that process and think about the number of moving parts and variables that you have to handle subconsciously to survive. We just froze everything. I had a pipe break in my garage. Thank the Lord it was in my garage. What do you do when the power goes out? Nothing? No, you respond. What do you do when the water goes out? What do you do when there's a pipe broken in the garage? That's math in practice. It's not about a number. It's about making a decision based on the evidence and responding to your circumstances that no longer are the same. The world we live in is different. It is different today than it was 6 months ago. It's different 6 months ago than it was 6 months before that. The universe completely changed between when I left education and when I came back. The world is variable. And our students are just watching it go by. Mm-hmm. And they don't understand. There are 6 million people plus in the Houston Metroplex who all want jobs. You have to compete making decisions. I asked a kid the other day, I said, he's going to drop out of school. He's a freshman. He's already decided he's going to drop out. I said, what are you going to do when you leave school? And your boss gives you a task to do that you don't know what to do. What are you going to do? What do you do when you don't know what to do? That's my question. And he goes, quit, find another job. Wow. I said, why? He goes, because if you don't know what to do, you're going to fail anyway. You might as well just walk away. I said, do you realize that I hired and fired people before? If I see that you quit every time things get hard, you'll never get hired again, because the world will hold you accountable, whether you think so or not.
Wow. Yes. I love that.
Okay. So I have a challenge for you, Mr. Tomhave.
Yeah.
I'm going to commission that you write a book based on this, because I need to just sit with these thoughts, and I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to this podcast over and over, because there's so much here flying through my brain. And so I just need you, in all of your kindness, to gift us with like putting these thoughts on paper so that we can just stare at them. Because this is the kind of thing that is that has to change education. Because if we can't get to this point, we're insane, because we keep doing the same thing over and over, thinking we're going to get a different result. But education hasn't changed in 100 years.
We sure think it has, though.
No, just because you're doing it online, you're still teaching bad online. It doesn't matter. It just is what it is.
Or you're teaching great online, and your kids still don't learn it because they don't know how.
Exactly. And I
don't know how.
I agree. And you know what? Like, even whenever I was earlier this year, when I was teaching, 6th grade band, I ran into the same issues, and I would ask them those questions. Well, what are you going to do? No clue. I don't know. They don't even know how to think about solving a problem. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's because they're incapable. I think it's because they've never been asked to. So therefore, they have never worked that muscle. And so the default is, ain't nobody got time for that. Like, that's boring to me. I would rather go play a video game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
honestly, I'd rather log into YouTube and watch a YouTube video of someone else playing a video game I like.
Absolutely.
My son did that when he was a little younger, and I was like, what in God's name are you doing? He's like, I'm watching this guy play this game that I like. I'm like, you have that game. Well, go play that game. He's better than me. I don't care. Go buy. Why would you want it?
Right.
Go take the dog for a walk. Would you? Come on.
And Tyler's going to write a book. Tyler's going to write a book about that.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I stream games, and like, I watch people play games. It's the same reason why. Look, I get you why you don't understand, because I don't understand why people watch the Super Bowl. I'm like, why would you want to watch football on TV? That's dumb. Like, just go outside with this stupid football. Like, why are you going to watch basketball? Like, that's dumb. Just go outside with a basketball.
Right.
But
and there's an entertainment level to everything.
But I'm a lot old, Tyler. I'm a lot older than you. Like, I'm a lot. Chris Mosley. I don't know how old. What
he's
age
really old. He's really old.
I'm young 20s. Young 20s. early 20s.
Right.
Well, I'll say it to you this way. There's a couple of people in my department that I found out were born my senior year of high school or after. Okay.
No.
All right. So I graduated high school class of 98. I married a much better woman than I'm worth in 2002. My kid. So, you know what I mean? Like, I'll be 41 this spring. I started this journey as an educator 19 years ago. And I was working in education before that, because I was tutoring individuals while going to college to try to make some side money, because I could do the math. So I've been working with kids struggling in math since I was 19, 20 years old. So when you look at the world that's changed, I asked my dad what he thought about these things. And at the time, and this is probably 3-4 weeks ago, I couldn't put my finger on it. You know what I mean? Like, I had a kind of a general impression of the things I'm seeing. And his response was, the questions you are asking are the same ones that have been asked my entire career. However, the circumstances that they fall under are more difficult, more challenging, and way less flexible than I had when I started.
Wow.
Because we exist in a system that is rigid, with an art form of education that is supposed to be fluid. Mm-hmm. Who is to say that a kid should know at 6th grade if they just don't know? Who makes that decision? And then how far back do we have to go to start that process? Right? His comment was, most elementary teachers hate math, and they don't have to teach it. They just have to feel it, and elementary kids will pick it up. And they will imbibe on their students a distaste for anything math, or a belief that math is not a method of thought. And so we take away all of the things that are fun about math, which is solving problems that people find challenging. That should be fun and exciting. Mm-hmm. But it's not. It's not. For most people, it's not.
Wow. Tomhave, you've given us so much to think about. I'm so thankful for this. And this is not a lot of our episodes. We kind of give you some solutions and we say try A, B, and C and go and live long and prosper. That is not this episode today. This is like kind of one of those things where it's like you just kind of sit with it and you just think like how is this fitting into me as an educator? Because even if you're not a math teacher, I don't think this is a problem just with math, and maybe it is amplified with math
Definitely.
because of the negative persona, I guess, that math can get. But I think this happens in every subject for some kid. Every kid is walking in to a subject that they feel less confident about, or that, and for some kids, it's every subject because that's just their self perception. So, I mean, there's so much here. Your take, your perspective on what we do is so fresh and it's so needed.
I appreciate that.
So,
And I'll tell you, I will end with just I'll give you a little bit of advice.
yes,
How am I? I'll just tell you how I'm going to try to move forward.
yes,
Okay. Because in this situation, the solutions are so varied. There is no solution that is for all. Okay. So each kid, I do one-on-one conferencing with every single kid as often as humanly possible. That's just me.
yeah,
But I'm talking to those kids, but I'm asking them different questions. So when they tell me I won't pass this, I go, okay, when did you come to believe that you can't be successful? When did that start for you? When did you start hating math? When did you start hating reading? When was the last time you felt successful in math? What's stopping you now? What can I do to help you? And some of my kids, I have to ask them like, test me, try me. I promise you, if you will give me everything I ask for 9 weeks, I will never fail you. You will not fail, but you have to commit to me that you will do whatever I ask. You can't argue and you can't complain. You can ask any question that you want, but you got to go. And that's where we're living right now. And so for the folks that are out that are like, this is you, this is the life that you're living, this is the situation you find yourself in, start asking them, do you trust me? How can I earn your trust so that you can try for yourself something that I know that you can do? Because if you tell yourself that you can't do it, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and go like, well, I don't think I can do it, but Mr. T does.
yeah,
I know Mr. Tomhave believes I can do this. So maybe there's a chance. Because if we don't start hinging on hope, you wouldn't think we talk about hope in math class. We have to talk about hope, because as long as learning is hopeless, no curriculum is going to reach that.
yeah. It's powerful.
Well, I need to say something.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, I woke up this morning at like 2:30 a.m. I don't know why. Okay. It's just like I've been like I taught all day. Like I just stopped teaching maybe like an hour ago. I ran here and I got right on. So, I've been teaching understaffed and like been going. And I've talked to Pratt and everybody about that, But so like Mr. Tom, hey, this is my first time like meeting you or whatever. But I want to say it's like so refreshing to hear your words and just like your take on just education from a different perspective, but the same perspective, as we have, and just your like spirit and your the way that you dive into things and you see things. It's definitely embodies like our teach bigger spirit, and like just that much has refreshed me, in just that little bit of time. So like I want to thank you for that. And I think this is something important too, like for all teachers, because how we feel, and I appreciate that you said, like you feel like sometimes you're not successful for this, that because of this year. Like we all feel that way. And I think that as teachers, like no one feels how we feel and know how we feel except us. So like, and we do this because it is a calling to us, and it's more than just a job for most of us. And one thing that's frustrating for me is people who don't serve kids well. And I think that, surround yourself with people who have the right idea, and like don't surround yourself with naysayers, but people who dig in and problem solve it's important to keep moving forward in like the time that we have. So this is like real time. This is how I feel. I just want to like thank you, and like, you know, we're probably gonna have you back on. I'm probably gonna be talking to you a lot just because like you're what we need, like all of us, teachers, kids, and everything. So we appreciate you. I
Appreciate that so
appreciate it.
much.
Yeah. You know, yeah.
I'm
Definitely
so
needed.
glad to be here. You know, I had a tough day today. I had a really tough day today. And, you know, when I got home and I sat down on my couch and I was like, somehow between 5 p.m. and 6:45 p.m., I have to be able to set aside the abysmal failure that was today and take a deep breath and have a conversation with you gentlemen about greater things.
Yeah.
And you know, that is not easy and it is not trivial, but it is worth it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell my kids that they're funny. They'll be like, you emailed me at 10 o'clock last night. I was like, I was still working. And they're like, why? I said, because you're worth it. You don't think you're worth it, but I know you're worth it. You know, and it's hard that sometimes we're the only adults, especially there are 3 men in this conversation. Let me tell you, gentlemen, as men in education, sometimes we are the only positive male that our students see ever.
Yep.
And so just being that voice of reason to say, I care about you enough to refuse to accept failure from you. Because they go, failure is not an option. No, baby, failure is always an option. Quitting is never an option.
Yeah.
Failure is a possibility, but quitting should never even be on the table. Move the ball. Move the ball.
It's good. Thank you. Thank you for today. Thank you for listening. Today has been powerful. I hope that you're just totally meditating on this like we are. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. So that way, every time we have a new episode, you get a notification. Also, if you want to reach out to us, if you have questions for Aaron, if you want to run an idea past him, whatever, you can reach out to us by email at info@teachbigger.com. We will get that information to him and we can start a correspondence that way. Feel free to message us on Twitter, Instagram, follow us, keep up with the things that we're doing. I think, as you can tell, this Teach Bigger movement that we are so honored to be a part of is really starting to catch on and growing. And you know what? There are a lot of educators out there that think like you do, and we're finding each other, and we need to be a source of encouragement to each other. And so I hope that today has challenged you. And again, it's not that we have all the answers, but we sure can dialogue and dive into the issues and say, how can we support each other in all of this? So thanks again for listening. Make sure that you subscribe, you check us back out. Check out the website, teachbigger.com, for more information, and we'll be back with you next week.